I know it's a little darker right now, so get up. It is Sunday night, August 15th. I know a lot of things have been happening. It's been a hell of a tragedy. It's what? For an evening time, it's been full of news. Protesters going for vaxxers and anti-vaxxers left and right. Stabbing, damn near killings over this. People still freaking out about the damn thing. Tragedy happening all over the globe. Haiti's still suffering after 2 days worth of having your place got shaken down to its foundations. 7-pointer. Almost a 7.2. It's in an area where hard to get to. A lot of people have been injured and killed. Family members, lost members. Act like relief efforts are underway. Southwestern portions of the United States burning up. Fires. One of them, Dixie Fire, is about 31% contained, so it's about 554,000 acres destroyed already. I don't know how many communities have already been wiped out already on that one. It's ongoing since July. It's a lot of forest. 20-year war that kind of reminded me of Vietnam. Growing up as a kid, you're, I don't know, we'll put this in the third person here, subject to a lot of images that one will not have the context or perspective. Context. Nothing. You're watching this and you don't even know what the hell's going on. You don't even understand if it's horrible or not. You're seeing relative, your own siblings, your own family, freaking over the damn thing, and you don't even know what the hell's going on. There's only toddlers, what the hell you know about Vietnam? Not a damn thing. It's just nothing to you. You know what heart surgery is. I know what heart surgery is. So back in the first person. I know what heart surgery was. I know what death was. Not fun to go through. I know what being sliced and diced and being poked and prodded and everything else. I know what accidents were and I'm bleeding all over the damn place. Having pneumonia, hard time coughing and breathing. I didn't know anything about social injustice. I didn't know anything about a war that was started by a government and feared communists so much that it started to crap up with another country just so it could stop a communist scare. And the country turned out to be communist anyway, but its own form of communism. In the middle of the attacking country was the one that you were born in. Yeah, so it's back to third person and everything. And images that are burned in pictures are posted and put through newspapers and magazines. It still doesn't mean a damn thing to me. I could have been born one of those kids and it would have been a damn thing to me. But I was lucky enough I wasn't. Because I had enough issues as it is to deal with. It was not until I got older and started reading old magazines and National Geographics and maybe if there was something covered in history books or even other periodicals, whatever written materials actually would have the pictures of the war. Because growing up in the 60s, it's too damn fresh, 70s, they tried to forget the whole damn thing. There were prisoners of war coming over, you know, for a toddler to a near adolescent doesn't understand why people were spitting on other soldiers, and then when the POWs came home, they had somewhat of a better welcome than the soldiers coming home. The POWs came home with a little bit of decency and respect. Everybody else prior to them got insulted. At least those who actually didn't like the damn system in the first place, or the government, or the policies that happened, or even the soldiers themselves, because they represented an oppressive government that was being viewed as a democratic society, according to what people had kept talking to other people about left and right. Which is nothing but a bunch of fascist pigs. Yeah, I heard it. I just didn't understand what the hell the damn thing was all about. I'm watching this. I'm watching this growing up. I'm watching this on TV. I'm hearing it from other people talking in different neighborhoods about it. But the soldiers that actually came home, they were afraid of coming back outside in uniform because they get insulted or actually pelted with eggs or something. Some actually did get shaken hands and left and right. But the rest of them were like, what the hell are we over there for in the first place if we're coming back home to this crowd? And in the 80s, nothing of this was being discussed because we wanted to erase the whole damn situation in the first place. It never happened. Several years, what was it, from 64, 65? All the way through 75, about a decade. Most of that was fighting in combat, and the rest of the time, I don't know what the hell was going on. And then we see something like the fall of Saigon on television. I'm watching this damn thing on television, and I don't know what the hell's going on. And I'm seeing images of helicopters after being evacuated dumping off of aircraft carriers into the drink because there wasn't enough room on the flight deck just to evacuate a hell of a lot of people. And other people tried to get into the embassy, tried to get into those helicopters to get the hell out of the city. Some of them were actually civilians who didn't work anywhere with the United States, just wanted to get the hell out of there. And then they were subject to what was going on. And afterwards, in the 80s, we heard about boat people. People coming on boats across the waters to different countries, including the United States, Hawaii, to different islands, in Guam. All trying to escape. All trying to escape communism. And they still didn't understand what the hell it was back then. There was not that much information to give the public or actually educate the students in the first place what the whole controversy wasn't at all. It was not until it was materials being disclosed left and right throughout the decades are we actually able to understand even more of it, and most of it. And we actually were able to talk to the veterans who've been to the war, where they were able to give us some kind of perspective of what the hell they went through. And it was hard as hell for them to do that. You go to the veteran stand-downs, and if you actually see the veterans left from Vietnam, good luck. And if they actually did talk, even better luck. But even that, they won't even tell you what the hell is going on. Not even to themselves. There had been artists out there who had seen, actually some of them had been, and tried to explain it in certain areas, in certain songs. You could see some of the movies coming out in the 80s trying to explain a little bit about what was going on, trying to make it a little bit more dramatic and a little bit more action, probably. They tried to make a laughable damn thing on prime time as a renegade four-person, I don't know what the hell you call them, they call them the A-Team. And they make it into a joke. Meanwhile, the other guys suffering through the damn shit are laughing their asses off, or actually throwing things at the damn television. Or just shaking our heads and turning the damn thing off and said, and that's why these people in this generation don't understand what the hell we went through. Why we went through it. Because there wasn't that much information coming out of it during that time. Growing up, hell, there was not that much mentioned concerning about Vietnam, not to mention concerning about the Middle East in the first place. Or what the hell they were going through, except when you turn on the news and you see Egypt going at it, Israel going at it, Lebanon going through it, Syria going through it. The historic moment that had Jimmy Carter trying to broker peace between Egypt and Israel, who have been undergoing a combat situation with these guys, trading borders and trading with blood on both sides. And Carter manages to get Malcolm Begin and Anwar Sadat of Israel, Begin of Egypt, to shake hands at Camp David. Video, audio, pictures of it. Pulitzer Prize, Nobel Prize situation. Short time later, these leaders go back home and they get killed. Treaty holds, but they get killed by the ones that still want the damn war to continue on. Looking back at that information as an adult, that's shocking as hell. Growing up as a teenage adolescent to a teenager, nothing. Just another footnote in history, and goes in right over your head. Doesn't have anything to do with your life. That sucked. Then we hear about the Gulf War crisis happening during the 90s. More of an adult, learning more about history as news keeps flashing on. Newspapers offer more. Periodicals offer their own slant. Trying to keep up with all that history happening before your eyes. And still you're trying to build up the context and perception and perspective of the whole damn thing. It's just not to mention having your own damn relatives participating in bloody ops every so often. If you actually had family members who served in military, you know that the jobs they did was pretty damn hard enough as it is, and there's no way in hell they're going to be telling anybody about it until maybe decades later when the information's been declassified, and they still can't talk about it because of the horror that they've been through. Well, they started up late 80s to the early 90s concerning about Saddam Hussein. Yeah, use that name anyway. So-called tyrannical leader of Iraq. Bullshit. Tyrannical bully. And there's history on this schmuck anyway. There's a lot of it. And unfortunately, our hands are not clean on that one either. But he goes out and he wants to get control of oil. More oil, more power. More ego. He was called the strong man, he was called the bully. And he bullied people and did terrible things to a lot of those people, including people to the north and south and east and west. It was just a regular asshole. Next thing I know, I've got family members being called up, I got friends being called up in the military. And they're being sent over as part of a SHIELD operation, and then storm, and then mop up, and they come back home. And there was no way in hell they would be able to tell me anything because they were still digesting it all. I still couldn't get any information concerning about Vietnam. But they were coming out slowly and surely with all that information. And yes, you are seeing flies all over the place in this department, so yeah, it's not special effects. It's not an infestation. So watching that going on, and then seeing terrorists throughout the 60s and 70s and 80s and 90s, it's like, what the hell is going on in the world? Cruise ships, planes, 72 Olympic Games out in Munich, Germany. We had to have movies concerning about this stuff afterwards. We had to have movies concerning about the Middle East situations, concerning about plane hijackings, and about our specialized military trying to protect and save people. And who do we put in the front? Lee Marvin. Who's the other guy kicking and punching it left and right, doing karate? Oh, that's just Chuck Norris. He's already been in the business long enough. He's been kicking people left and right. Now we had to put Lee Marvin in the picture, don't we? It was basically a Chuck Norris picture. The Delta Force. And then we had to screw things up left and right to make sequels to the damn thing. But we had to show how America tough. That wasn't bad enough. We show a disgruntled Vietnam vet going through his PTSD traumas, doing the things that America wanted to do and couldn't. The first film, Sylvester Stallone's on a bad campaign of trying to save his ass and save his life from a crazy person who's called himself a sheriff, right? Charles Navy. Talented actor. His character was supposed to be a Marine and from a war prior to one that Stallone was representing. Stallone was representing those guys who came home who had been so mentally screwed up that they couldn't get help. And he was making a plea one way or another, they needed help. But in the film we had to make it into an action situation, didn't we? In the book, Stallone was supposed to be dead. Killed by a former commanding officer. But it made so much sense putting him as a survivor. Of course, he went to federal prison for it. We never know what the hell happened to Sheriff Teasdale, except he was bloodied up. Pretty damn good, too. Probably got a retirement out of his job. But then you had to have the franchise of Rambo. So much that President Reagan thought Rambo was going to be the American status symbol for America during that time. And we're going crazy with the Star Wars situation. We had to have a space-based laser system to protect our satellites. We had to have nuclear weapons. We had to have explosives out in space. We had to make sure we had an impenetrable shield of some sort to protect us from missile or nuclear attack. Our flights of fancy had put us through a hell of a lot of situations that Hollywood would show us, but then reality would show us a different thing altogether. In the 90s, when you have, or actually, late 80s, early 90s, through the mid 90s, you'd have homegrown terrorists trying to protest the government one way or another. And the government response is to come out shooting. But who was the one that caused the whole situation in the first place? That finger's been blaming everybody else a lot of time. Oklahoma City bombing. Oklahoma City bombing is one guy went through military training. Something snapped in him. Somehow down the line he gets help with another person. He decides to take out his frustration on the federal government by blowing up a building with people in it, including children. Guy gets the death penalty. Ground domestic terrorism. It's bad enough when you have a lunatic with religious aspects of trying to bring people to God by killing people left and right with guns. Of course, you must protect yourself over this damn stuff. I am your person. It doesn't talk about this stuff. Yeah, Jim Jones happens in the mid-70s killed his own damn, his followers and himself. Correction, his damn Branch Davidian numbnusses. They end up barbecued. And the federal government still gets blamed for everything on that one. And we'll go out to the external terrorists. We actually have a bombing situation happening. World Trade Center in a garage that doesn't do a damn shit except maybe weaken the foundations just a little bit. Mastermind gets jailed, turned into a damn martyr. Cult leader. Next thing we know, the 21st century. That's when the year of terror really starts drawing up the heat for us. And that's why we have a 20-year war. Of course, I'm talking about on my own damn personal experiences and observations, what I've been reading, and trying to digest for all outlets as much as I can, not to mention talking to people on occasions where I got in a situation, because throughout my life, these situations happen and hardly anybody would be able to talk about it, except maybe after, a decade or two after, if you're lucky enough, almost lucky enough. And then I see people coming back from the war, the 20-year war, either with Iraq or Afghanistan, more changed and more different than usual, than what I knew them. I've lost friends, and it's been hard. Wars like that take away a lot of our innocence and our understanding why the hell we keep doing this to ourselves. But I don't know. I'm only watching all this damn shit happen left and right. I see friends isolating from everybody else. Some actually turn their passions or their training in the military into a damn passion to help others. And then have to go into another war, so but not a physical combat with RPGs and with handguns, but with syringes and test tubes and people's lives directly under their hands, trying to fight viral warfare. And during the situation where we have a 20-year war ending, the after effects are going to be biting us in the ass. After 9/11 hit, that's when all of our issues really started becoming more acute. So what the hell were we supposed to be doing and responding to? 20 years trying to do a regime change in one country, seeing some kind of revolution happening within the past 20 years in several countries, some taking place and others crash and burned. Primary country we go into trying to find a lunatic, and several years later we finally find a guy, cap his ass. Can stay in country. Trying to make sure that no bad guys come in there to screw up the work. Western people have been trying to do. Now, because of certain announcements that have been happening over the past 2 or 3 years. Taliban comes in Afghanistan finally and roosts. And the veterans are screaming their heads off. They're groaning. They've got representatives going on camera moaning and groaning about the damn thing, and half the time they're right. But the problem is, the longer and longer you stay in the damn country, the more you're going to be resented like crazy. And people are not going to want you anymore either. If history's ever taught us that one. So any foreign invaders coming into another country are not exactly welcomed or tolerated. Unless, of course, they are beaten back severely to a point where they're not able to do anything anymore. She had it out work out for the Indians. The Native Americans, actually, in the new land, especially when you had the European colonists my ass, how about invaders coming over? Didn't work out too well. So now we're hearing people freaking out about Afghanistan, and they're worried about whether or not we're going to have another terrorist attack. I guarantee we probably will. We just won't see it coming. But we're too damn busy trying to be something else that we're not. We've lost track, we've lost sight. We lost what the hell we were supposed to be, or all those things we're growing up and being educated as. So yeah, I'm a little bit there's no words to describe it. If my brother and I were here, we'd probably look at each other. My brother's still alive, that is. We wouldn't have to say anything. Living with a veteran that long, you start to know a few things. You start to know how a little bit of his mind worked. And you start to understand where his views, his values, and his opinions are. My brother was a vet. He had seen combat in the service. And that's his clock on the wall that stopped a long time ago. That's not mine. It doesn't belong to me. It belongs to him. He's alive. Now several months. Clock just stopped. Everybody will get it fixed. But it's been there ever since. We've had that for a few years. Several years anyway. Good timepiece to it. But I keep it up there as a reminder of my brother. He never got the honors. He never got lauded. He never got praised. He got the outlet taken away from him when he made a few mistakes that costed him his honor with the military. Because family had to come first. And I'm talking bloodline family had to come first before Uncle Sam. So God had a different pathway for my brother. So my brother had to suffer through it. Bad conduct. They could have given it a dishonorable, but they had an attorney fight the court system. And got out of the bad conduct. He had a situation at home that had to be taken care of. When you're having a parent taking care of another parent and they're both disabled, it's kind of hard to let that go, especially when you're in the military. But when the military says, no, you're not going anywhere, you're stuck here. My brother had to decide family had to come first, always. And the family was was the bloodline, not the government. But always here, as he didn't get lauded as he wanted, he didn't get respected enough. He always feared that people would say that he had stolen valor. He didn't have stolen valor. He had more valor than anybody else had, pretended to have. And a lot of people who know best, unfortunately, have passed away. And my brother, I had to speak on behalf of him. I had to speak on behalf of my brother. My brother died a hero, even though disease took his ass out. He died serving his country, and I died serving him. I'm not dying, but I did serve as vet. I did serve my country by serving as vet. I'm kind of proud of that too. I did volunteer work in my youth in high school for about a school year. I'm proud of that one too. I may be a full idiot half the time, but you know I really don't care. I've seen too much crap that's happening these days. A couple of days from now, on Tuesday, I'm going to be going back to another war zone of nerves. It's called the educational system. Since being locked up at home for over a year and trying to deal with the online learning, it's going to be an interesting. It's going to be an interesting challenge of getting back into the regular curriculum again, into maybe a modified environment. I'll still be able to walk on it instead of doing the computer all the time. Sometimes I miss talking to the teachers and students in person, you know, or the faculty and staff going over to a cafeteria and ordering some food there. Going into a computer library. But these things happen. But for me, we're going to see what happens. We're going to see what happens. The news will probably tell you more and more bad news of what's going on these days. The media outlets will be making more and more of a big deal about something else going on, but you know, things happen, you gotta deal with it. Doesn't mean you have to like it. So, with that, this is Weaver John C. from Rosamond, California. The zombie of Rosamond, California.